Hi, how are you doing? It is time for now wrap up. April flew by absolutely insanely quickly, but I also managed to read a very large amount of books. As you saw in the thumbnail, I have this very large stack of books to talk about, and that's not even all because I also read some e-copies, but I did a whole lot of physical reading this month, which has been a while since I've had such a large stack. In the month of April, I read 13 books, which amounted to 5,228 pages read, which is an average of 409.84 pages per book and an average of 177.6 pages per day. Cheers to that. So for format, 5 of the books that I read this month I owned. Then 4 were galleys from that galley and 4 were from the library. For star ratings, we have 1 2-star, 4 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and 4 5 stars, which is an average rating of 3.84. Yes, that's the numbers that I love to hear. And for age range, we have 1 middle grade, 6 young adult novels, and 6 adults. For the genres, we have 6 contemporaries, 1 graphic novel, 5 fantasies, and 1 historical. So those are all stats I'm really happy with, but let's actually talk about the books that I read this month, because that's what you actually care about. The first book I read this month is Twisted Caves by Ana Huang, which I gave 5 stars to. This is the second book in the Twisted series. I read Twisted Love in January, I believe, and I really enjoyed that, but it was like my favorite. But I have been kind of eyeing this one the entire time since I read it, and in April I just like bit the bullet and read it, and I was just utterly obsessed with it. I love this so much. This is a princess bodyguard romance, and I really love that dynamic. I haven't read many books with that dynamic, but it works, and I especially really like the relationship between our 2 characters in this one. Also, their personal journeys were really interesting. I do have a history of like a royalty in my books, but that usually is always translated into fantasy books, so I also really liked having it in this contemporary novel. Really loved the romance, thought it was really well done, and I was obsessed with this book. I basically inhale read it. And then next I read The Sprite and the Gardener by Abrego and Whitt, which I gave to 5 stars as soon as I got from the galley. This is a cute graphic novel, and that's also kind of everything I have to say about it. I thought it was cute, and I had fun reading it, and I would recommend it if you want something cute. And the art style was amazing, it was beautiful, but I also just like, I don't know, this isn't very memorable. Most of the time when I'm like listing the books that I read this month, I even forget that I read this one, because it's a nice time while you read it, but it's like nothing that really stuck in my mind that much. Then next I read The Hammer of Thor by Rick Riordan, which I gave 5 stars to, and this is the second book in the Magna Shades and the Gods of Asgard series. I reread the first book last month so that I can finally finish up this series, and I'm really glad I reread that first book because I love it even more the second time around. And I also thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's not a 5-star like the first book was, because I did have some issues with it, but overall I did still have a fun time reading it. I just think this book was very low stakes, which made me a little bit less invested in it as I would like, but I still really love this cast of characters, and I like the overall journey we went up. It was a fun romp. I had a fun time, no complaints there. I don't know, that first book ended especially so high stakes for me, so the fact that I just felt a bit of it that this was like lower stakes, and I don't know, I didn't feel the tension as much with this one, so that's why I ended up docking a star. But I did immediately move on to The Ship of the Dead by Rick Riordan, which I did give out of 5 stars to. This is the last book in the series, and I love it so much. The stakes were raised yet again. We also get some characters that are a bit more sidelined in the other 2 books, have more of a prevalent role in this book, and it was so much fun to learn more about them as well. Like I said, I adore this cast of characters so much. It's such a great group of found family, and I am really sad that the series is over, but I did think this was an amazing series conclusion. I even teared up towards the end a bit because I was just so invested, and I'm sad it's over, but I love this so much. And next I read Something Wild and Wonderful by Anita Kelly, which I gave 5 stars as soon as I got from that galley. This is the author's second like full-length novel, and I've read both. I just don't think they are the author for me, because I can't give you any like solid complaints about this book. It's just that it didn't really work for me, and I had the same issue with the first book. I wasn't really that invested in the romance, and I can't complain. I can't tell you why. It is a bit incel-y, but considering the circumstances, I think it does makes sense. And I have loved incel lovey books before, so it's not like that's the reason I was not into the romance. For some reason that didn't really click with me. I didn't really like the setting of like the trial, the hiking stuff. I thought that was a really fun way to tell a romance, to the story. And I also liked the individual journeys both of the characters went on. I don't know, the romance didn't really hit for me, and therefore I just felt a bit bored while reading this book. Like, this took me such a long time to read because I kept dreading picking it up. And next I read Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to, and this is a reread. I really loved this book the second time around. First time I gave it 4 stars, and I said I didn't really connect with the characters, which I think is so odd because now rereading it, I think the characters are my favorite part of this book. I really love the cast of characters and I love their friendships together. And the Merry Thieves are just a special group of friends. I love them so much. And I also just had so much fun reading with the plot because I do think the plot was interesting. It starts off a bit slow, but you're getting like little puzzle pieces all the way through, and then at a certain point like things start connecting together and falling together, and it becomes just so good. And I generally just loved my time rereading it. And I also tapped this time around, and look at those beautiful colors. Next I reread Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. Like I just said, this is a reread. Again, look at the tabs, it's a little less. I really love it. Like I said, it's 4 stars. I don't love it as much as the first book because I can recognize like the most common criticism I've seen of this book over the years is that it's very predictable, and it is. It's just, well, the first time I read it, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see the big plot twist coming, and therefore it shocked me. And like I said, it's one of the first books I started reading when I got into booktube, so that's also when a lot of my reading changed. At the time, this was a big deal when I read it, but now I can totally see everyone's complaint that this is predictable, because it is. Like, it's almost just like giving you the solution almost word for word before the end. I can recognize that, and I dock the star for that, but this does still have a special place in my heart. And like, take this review with a grain of salt, because someone reading this book for the first time now would have a very different reaction to it, I'm sure. But I just loved it. I had such a blast with it. This contains so many of like my favorite tropes, and not necessarily in a way that's new or exciting. It's just in a way that just perfectly blends them all, and it's just nice and comforting. And I really liked it. I really like the story, I like the world, and I like the cast of characters. And yeah, I am very excited to be continuing with this series. Then next I read the Fiancée Farce by Alexandria Bellefleur, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. It's the guy I got from NetGalley. I read Written in the Stars by this author a couple of months ago, and I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but I still wanted to give her another shot, and I'm so glad I did, because this book was so good. This is a engagement of convenience romance, and it's sapphic, and it's so good. I really think this setup works, because even though I love a modern day marriage / engagement of convenience story, I do think like the motivation behind it needs to work, and you need to have a believable story behind it, which is more difficult than in an historical setting. But I think it really worked for this one. I really loved each character separately in their separate journeys, but I also really loved the relationships that they ended up developing. And again, this is one that I inhale read because I just really enjoyed it. It's not a book that I was really obsessed with, but I did thoroughly enjoy it, and I would highly recommend. And then the next book that I read is Beach Read by Emily Henry, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars to. This is the last Emily Henry adult romance that I still had to read, but now Happy Place has come out, and I'm 1 book behind again. This is also my least favorite of the ones I've read. I mean, it's still a 4 stars, I still really enjoyed it, but I feel like this book was very melancholy and read a bit more women's fiction or like literary fiction rather than pure romance to me, because so much of this book is just focused on our main character and her dealing with her grief of losing her father, and her just, I don't know, figuring out who she is, what she's doing. So therefore it felt like that was definitely the focus of this book. I feel like when it comes to other Emily Henry's book, they all have a side storyline of the characters' personal journeys, but I feel like the romance is the main focus. I feel like the romance in this one just very much was just something that was there. I really liked it. I liked the way it was developed. I thought it was really well done. I wasn't as invested in them because it was more in the background. Then next I read Chain of Ivan by Cassandra Clare, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars to. This is the second book in the Last Hour series. I did a full spoilery vlog on this one, so if you want to know my spoiler thoughts of it, go check it out. But like I said, it's spoilers. There's nothing spoiler free in that one, so go watch on your own risk. This is the annotations. As you can see, a very big difference with Chain of Gold. That's because I didn't like this one as much. Chain of Gold's plot started off slow, but I feel like we got puzzle pieces throughout the entire thing, and then it just kind of like ramped up. This one, for the longest time, nothing was happening. And the things that were kind of like more happening that's like personal things that are like character relations that isn't like the main plot, those things I didn't really care about. I don't think Cassandra Clare put in the foundation in the first book well enough for me to care about what was happening at this point with those character relationships. So I just, for like the first, I don't know, quarter of this book, I was just so incredibly bored by it. I just wasn't having a good time at all. There were still some like fun moments, and I still like the characters to get like, I still like the group of friends and like the characters. I still like those things, but I just was like constantly thinking, what are we doing, what we doing? And then we really got into the plot in the middle of this book, and I was loving it. I was having such a fun time. I was theorizing, I was trying to connect dots, and I was having a fun time. And then we get the resolution to the plot about like, I don't know, 100 pages from the end, and I was like, this is very disappointing. It was over in like 2 pages. I was like, really we were building to this the entire time. That's it. And those last 100 pages, again, we focus more on like character stuff, and that was every character just making dumb decision after dumb decision after dumb decision, and it doesn't really work for these characters because these characters are smart people, and we've seen them make smart decisions the entire way through. And just for some reason, they all lost their brains in the last 100 pages of this. I was so mad. Then next, I read Twisted Hate by Ana Huang, which I also gave 3 to 5 stars to. This is the 3rd book in the Twisted series. This is a enemies with benefits best friends brother romance. We see these 2 characters interact a lot in Twisted Love and Twisted Games, so I was really excited to read this book. For the longest time, this was going the same way as Twisted Love was for me, where it's like, I'm enjoying this, but I'm not like in love with this, I'm not invested in it. I like the personal journeys of our 2 separate main characters. I also really loved them as people. I loved their dynamic. I thought they had great banter, and then when it came to like developing feelings, I thought that was all really well done and really well developed, and I was generally rooting for them to get together. But then the third eye conflict happened, and I mean, it's very difficult for me to like it as third eye conflict, which is something that you know, but most of the time I am kind of indifferent about them. I'm bothered that they happen, but I'm also like, it's the genre and I don't hate this. But this one I hated. I think I went a little bit too far, which made me not root for the romance anymore. And even though I don't hate the resolution, the way it was resolved, I don't know, I feel like we crossed some lines that I don't like crossing. And then next we have Just Like Heaven by Quinn, which you guessed it, I give 2 to 5 stars. I really just at the back of 3 stars. I was not having a fun time. But this is the first book in the Smythe-Smith quartet, so it takes place in the same world as like the Wilkesbys and the Bridgerton series. In fact, Gregory and Colin make an appearance in this one, in case you want to know if you're a Bridgerton fan. I saw this at the library, was very excited to give it a read, and it didn't fully work for me. The romance itself I really liked. I thought it was sweet, I thought it was cute, I really liked how it was developed. I liked relationship as well. I thought they were very sweet together, very cute. I liked that way that was done. There's also a caretaking romance, in case you're interested in that, and I thought that was really well done as well. But there just wasn't anything to this story besides the romance. Like, I can't tell you anything about these characters besides what's relevant to the romance. There was no personal growth, personal journeys, there was no side plot, nothing. And you know, you need to have a very exceptional romance for me to like not care that there's nothing else. So yeah, I wasn't that invested in this romance. I liked it, but I wasn't like really invested in it that much. This tag behind me is a mess, I apologize. But we've arrived at the last book, and is also probably my favorite of the month. I'm not entirely sure, but I really loved it. That's Imogen, obviously, by Becky Albertalli, which I gave 5 to 5 stars to. And this I got from Night Alley. It comes out May 2nd, which should be before this video goes up, but I still said it. I love this. Becky Albertalli just hits the spot every time. I feel like she just writes books that are like perfectly tailored for me. And it's starting to get creepy because in this book, some of the main characters in a monologue come straight from my brain, and I think that's creepy. That's not allowed. Becky Albertalli, what you doing? I need to know. I overall really liked it. Like I said, it's like it came from my brain, which is annoying because I'm like, stop reading my mind. But I really related to Imogen in case it wasn't obvious, and I really liked the journey she went on throughout this book. I really liked the cast of characters, except one character who made my blood boil. That was their purpose, I think. At least I hope. That's how I read it. And there's also a woman's at the center of this, which isn't like the main focus of it, but you know, it's a part of it, and it's so cute and adorable, and I love it so much, and genuinely made me like squeal in excitement so many times. There we go, that's everything I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of these books, let me know in the comments what you thought of them, as well as some of the books you read in April I'd love to discuss, and hopefully I'll see you around next time. Bye!